Anybody? Napupagtagal.
Where are we, dude?
It appears we have found ourselves in Area 62,
Area 62? What's that?
mostly a state of mind and being emanating from somewhere within the Mojave Desert, but also a podcast sharing the culture of the high desert, beaming from Copper Mountain College in Joshua Tree. My protocols require me to state that the views you find expressed inside of Area 62 are the personal views of those participating in the podcast, not the official policies or positions of Copper Mountain College or the Copper Mountain Community College District.
Area 62 is sponsored by the Museum of History in Granite in Felicity, California, where history meets art and remembrance. The mission of the Museum of History in Granite is to engrave in granite highlights of the history of humanity. Remember, the purest form of education may be a self-directed search for knowledge. These summaries of vast subjects promote and encourage such efforts. The Museum of History in Granite welcomes you to visit and explore over 700 granite panels of history on 18 monuments. The museum's 1,100 etchings make it also a fascinating outdoor art museum. Learn more about the Museum of History in Granite and Felicity, California at www.museumforever.org. Your business or organization can become a sponsor of Area 62, and you can support the Mojave's Cultural Podcast for as little as $3 per month at patreon.com/Area 62. Area 62, beaming to you from Joshua Tree in the Mojave Desert. Hi, welcome back to the Area 62 podcast. I'm Nayeli, your host, along with my co-host, Jeremy.
Jeremy right here, aka J. Brad.
And today we'll be accompanied by the wonderful Jay and Sherry Paul. Today we're going to hear about their backgrounds, who they are, why they're here, what Joshua Tree means to them, and their late brother, Tommy Paul, and what Tommy Paul meant to Joshua Tree. Hi, Jay. Hi,
Hello
Sherry.
there.
How are you guys today?
Hello there. Thank you for inviting us here today.
How are you guys doing?
We're great today.
Doing great.
Nice to be here.
Beautiful day.
And today we're here with Steve Brown from Copper Mountain College.
Hi, Nayeli.
All right, let's jump into how you guys came out here and where you come from.
Okay. We currently live in the Coachella Valley, and we've come up here today to Joshua Tree to share a story about our brother who, a number of years ago, lived here and loved being a part of this exceptional community. And we're here to tell his story. His story is a musical life that we will share with you. There's been a documentary done on his life. It's also played here in Joshua Tree twice. Once here at the college and once at the community center. Is that what it is up the street?
The High Desert Cultural
The High Desert.
Center.
And it's a combination of music and his love. And we're up here because we see that this community is special. And we'll elaborate on that as we go.
Great. So do you have a background in music also?
I do. I'm now 81 years old, and I began just loving music, same as my brother did. And my mother was always interested in me playing like Harry James the trumpet. So she wanted me to play the trumpet, and I took the trumpet up as a kid, and I became a good trumpet player. I became the lead trumpet in the band, the pit band, and also the orchestra at my high school. I then started playing some guitar and started enjoying and loved to sing. And so my brother actually kind of followed in my footsteps, as he was 7 years younger than I was. And when I'd come home from California to Toledo, Ohio, which is where I was originally from, I remember the evening I came home and the family gathered around and I played and sang the guitar. And I remember my brother just kind of watching me, and all of a sudden somehow that got into him, and he picked it up and he took it to an incredible place, of which you'll hear what he's done with it and the love that he had. And eventually wound up here playing and loving this community, which is special for music and art.
So when you grew up playing instruments and growing in your musical background, did you ever think that you were going to make that into a career, or did you just want to keep it as something you enjoyed doing for yourself?
That's a good question, I think, for all people that would be young, looking for what they're going to do with their life. And I had an ability. The Lord gifted me something else. He gifted me the ability to be a very good athlete. And so I was the lead trumpet in the orchestra and the band and so on, but I was also the best tennis player in my hometown as a junior. And I received college scholarships to Ohio State to play tennis there, and also I could have been in their great marching band that they have at Ohio State. And I chose to go to California because, after all, there was a lot of pretty girls that were out in California, and I had heard of this group called the Beach Boys, and I'll be darned, I came to California, and then the rest of the story from there. So keep going. More
Right.
questions.
So speaking of the Beach Boys, I've heard that you have a special connection to the Beach Boys. Do you want to elaborate more on that?
I will, only because it's part of what I tell the story about my brother and his connection with California. When I came to California, can you imagine going from Ohio to the beach and winding up in Hermosa Beach? And within probably, I was going to say 3 months, I was in a singing group, and we were like the Kingston Trio. I played guitar, and we had a banjo player, and we were very good because the three of us were very good musicians. We had come from my hometown, and they decided to go back to Ohio State and go to college, and I was left. I'm going to stay out here. I'm in California. So I was going out to a class that I had at El Camino in the morning, and I couldn't get my car started, and there was a guy across the street, and I went and got him, and I said, "Could you help me push my car to get it started?" And he did. And afterwards, I said, "You play guitar?" And he said, "Yeah." Well, I said, "You see that apartment up there?" I said, we're going to gig tonight at 7 o'clock. Come on up." Never thinking. Bang on the door at 7 o'clock. The guy walks in with a guitar, sits down, and he listens to us play because he loved the Kingston Trio and Christy Minstrels, those kinds of groups. And he proceeded to tell us that he was Al Jardine of the Beach Boys, and he had dropped out of the group because his mother thought they weren't going to make it. And so through the course of the evening, eventually he said, "Well, why don't you move in with us?" So we had bunk beds, us three guys. I took the bunk beds, and moved in and lived with Al for about a year. Then we went our separate ways. He went back into the Beach Boys, and I went off to college. And then eventually I got a college scholarship because of the tennis. We were national junior college champions at El Camino Junior College. So that's pretty much my story through college.
What was your major?
Girls.
Oh, no.
It's very interesting because my major at the time was, I remember a friend when I first got out to California, and we're driving to what do you want to do with your life? And I said, "I want to become a millionaire." I remember saying that to him. And then $1 million was a lot of money at that point. And I just kept searching for the vehicle that could make me successful. And once I got into teaching tennis, that spun off of the college scholarship and my ability, I then became surrounded by very, very successful people who, doctors and lawyers, and they took a liking to me because they loved the teaching that I was giving them to become better at tennis. I discovered from that I heard a saying, if you want to be a millionaire, hang out with millionaires. And I was among them. And they taught me everything. And eventually I wound up in the real estate business, and that's where my true success has come from, in the real estate business. That's kind of my story. Sorry for babbling.
No, it's the good type of babble. We need to hear this as college students
That's
from
right.
someone who's
It's one of the reasons.
successful.
That's one of the reasons why I'm here, because I want to talk to the same people that I was when I was their age, and how to get where I got, and maybe I can be helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And another saying that I've heard for people who want to become millionaires is not just to learn all the strategies and ways that you can make the most money the fastest, but to actually be a good, authentic person and just to continue to be yourself, and the right people will gravitate towards you. And in that pool of people, one of them are bound to be successful or somebody that you can learn from. So I think that goes to show how you've lived your life, and God has blessed you for that.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, because the people that are at that level of success are very intelligent. Mm-hmm. And they want to surround themselves. I'll give you an example. One of the people that I got connected with at that time, and I'm not going to mention his name, was the wealthiest man in the world. And I was invited to play in a tennis situation for a weekend. And during that particular weekend, I invited him to come out to the court, and I showed him some things about how to become a better player. And we were there for 2 days playing tennis. And during the second day, I happened to be with his wife and he at a moment where he said to his wife, after being around me for 2 days, let's take Jay to Europe with us this summer. And I kind of looked up and said, what? I couldn't believe it. And I never took him up on that, because I was proud of who I was, and I didn't want to be owned by anybody, and I still wanted to make it on my own. But it's amazing. When you're a good person, people want you to become a part of them, because they want to trust somebody that is close to them for being honest with them. And that's I think, one of the reasons why life has been so good to me.
Yeah, it was kind of like a gravitational pull.
Correct.
So, Sherry, tell us a little bit about yourself and what connects you to the music.
Well, it's interesting. My music career was very fleeting. It was with the high school choir that I was passionate about being in and whatnot. But I went on to singing weddings, funerals, all this type of thing, which was fine. But actually, I really excelled in art. So, again, art was my thing. But I learned quickly when I tried to get work with art and so forth, there weren't a lot of outlets in the 1960s for women to work in the art field. And so my father always made sure I took bookkeeping, typing, math, all of those subjects, so I could go out and get a real job and support myself. So my music still will continue if I'm in a church choir or something like that. And my art, I have done a lot of art for people, our office buildings, homes, whatnot. I can crank it out, pretty easily. But I still, business is the main focus in my life. And so that's what I do.
When it comes to your art, what kind of muses do you have or inspirations? Could you say Tommy was one of them?
No, actually, I did my art long before I ever met Tommy. Tommy was probably not born when I was starting a lot of it.
Sherry, what kind of art medium do you practice?
My passion is oils, but I do watercolor, pen and ink, just about anything. Yeah, I was trained in just about anything, and pottery, mosaics, but really oil, charcoal, pastels, all of it. I had a scholarship to the Kansas City Art Institute while I was going to high school. So again, I was really getting my dream getting pumped out there, thinking I'm really going to get a career in art here someday. But no, it just wasn't meant to be back in those years.
Do you think that that would be a different story now?
Probably not. I'm a real realist, and I know what it takes to put bread on the table and buy a home and what it takes to live nowadays. No, I probably would have just been really serious into making a living rather than pursuing my passion.
But you're doing both simultaneously, right? Like you're still doing your art while also having a real job, so many people call it.
I am capable of doing that.
How did you two come together?
I'll give you the short version. I had come to California with an accident that had happened to me that sold all my possessions, came to California with 2 suitcases, $600, and moved in with a friend. And Jay was living in the same apartment complex as my friend. And he had a wonderful pickup line. He saw me standing on the corner waiting for my ride, and he said, "Hi, I don't have much time. I like your looks. Write your number down, I'll call you."
That is smooth.
And
I gotta remember that.
as it would be, in the car right behind him that day was his brother Tommy. And so I met them both at the very same time.
How old was Tommy?
Well, probably at that time he would have been about 25, something 30 years old, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
25 or 30. Yeah.
The story goes a little bit further that Sherry might want to tell about how we really came together, if you would like to know that. So go ahead, Sherry.
I don't know which part. Oh,
What happened? How did we eventually become an item?
well, I got a very, very nice job in Century City. And I had met someone that had asked me out on a date at work this one night. I got a call from Jay, and he said, "Hi, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting ready to go out on a date." And he said, "Cancel it. There's romance at my house." Another great line.
He really did major in girls.
He
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
He really
obvious.
did major in girls. Bottom line, I went to his apartment, knocked on the door. He told me which one was his. I hadn't been to his apartment yet. And opened the door. He was just frazzled. He had sublet his unit out, and the person had left it in a wreck. And he was really trying to clean it up quickly before I arrived. And I just kind of brushed him aside and started cleaning his apartment.
That was your first date? You cleaning him?
That's actually our second date, but that's what that was about. But what happened a few weeks after that, you never know the direction life is going to take you. I was at my job in Century City, had to be taken to the hospital, needed an emergency hysterectomy. Jay, after the surgery, brought me home to his place and took care of me till I was able to go back to work, because my roommate, she worked for the airlines and wasn't around much. So that's the story. We really became good friends, and that started it.
What did I say that changed it? Well,
You said it's really comfortable here with you. I wish you'd stay.
when we met, we were both dead broke, and then we started up pulling up the rope, and things changed in a very positive way. We're a team. So she's incredible.
That's lovely. That gives, I think, a lot of us something to look forward to. Just as long as you connect and you be honest, and no more of the, wishy-washy, just cutting straight to the chase like you did. I appreciate that.
Did you ever play some of the trumpet for her, like as a romantic gesture?
That's good.
That's a good question. The answer is no. Once I laid the trumpet down coming out of high school, I didn't pick it up again because, again, I got to California and all of a sudden it was the tennis racket. I still have the trumpet in my house. It's still there when you come in because it's part of my life with actually a picture of me playing lead on a solo in a pit band, and proud of that picture. But the trumpet, ultimately my brother did pick that up because he watched me and he became a very good trumpet player, obviously. And anyway, our relationship stands very strong, and my brother was a deep part of our relationship. Sherry is definitely a part of knowing this whole story regarding Tommy Paul.
So that's a good point, I think, for us to segue more into learning about Tommy, why he's important still to the desert, and why you felt the need to make the documentary documenting his life. Right? Were you the one that did that?
That's a good thought on your side. Tommy had, through the course of all this particular time in his life, he had gone through this Joshua Tree period. And when he became very, very ill, he ultimately wound up in hospitals. And during that period of time, Sherry and I took care of him when he got out of the hospital at our home. He lived with us almost a year. And then what happened at that point was that he had to be, as the documentary showed he had to leave here in Joshua Tree and wound up in Coronado Hospital. And yes, go ahead.
I think you want to know what happened to Tommy. He was on the liver transplant list. We had to be his caregivers, so that's why he was living with us.
Good point.
And
Well, let's go back to 2001, 2, when Tommy and Katrina kind of appeared in Joshua Tree, as it were, because that's kind of, he was already doing low desert music, wasn't he?
Oh, yes.
Before that? Right.
Oh, yeah. He was opening up radio shows. There's a very popular, we call him a disc jockey down in the Coachella Valley, and he opened his shows up with Tommy's music. In fact, that music that you're going to play part of it. Every morning, my brother was opening a radio show. He was that popular. And it's kind of interesting because one of the things that happened is that during that period of time, we would always go to these shows that were at the Annenberg. And while being at those shows, the couple that ran this particular radio show, Fitz, really took a liking. Fitz got Tommy jobs everywhere. He opened his radio show. And then one day we were at a concert of a trumpet player, one of the best I think there is now, because I gravitated to him. Chris Bodie is his name. And afterwards we would go backstage, and I gave his wife a copy of Tommy's songs that he had sung and wrote. And the next morning we received a phone call, and they said, we didn't know he could sing. And then they said, can we play his music on the radio show tomorrow morning? And they did. And that started a fan club. People were calling in from all over the country saying, who is this Tommy Paul? We want to hear this song. And that started it. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, because it still continued on. At that point, Tommy had already passed away. And then that's when his music really came to life.
So very similar to Van Gogh.
Yes, exactly. Are you aware have you seen the film?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Then that's how, yeah. And you've seen the film, so you saw where my brother compared Van Gogh's brother to me.
Right.
Yeah.
The brother who was successful, and him describing himself as the brother who's not so successful, a poor man, right, as he said in his own words.
One of the things that I would like to say, though, relative to my wife, we talked about this earlier, she's an incredible artist. However, she used common sense back then. And I've said earlier that an artist, when you're really, really an artist like Tommy was, and there are many out of all kinds of art, never give up what you love to do, no matter what. Because if you keep pursuing, even Van Gogh's work ultimately wound up being, we know how valuable it is today.
And museums.
Correct.
We actually have a clip from the documentary of Tommy
wonderful.
talking about this. So let's bring Tommy into the conversation.
Yes, let's introduce him.
Tommy Paul, my pal.
I was destined to pretty much follow probably the life that Van Gogh led, where he, there was never any success in his life. His brother was a very successful businessman, art dealer, and it's sort of like my brother and I. He's a very successful businessman, and I'm poor. So as far as the arts go, I guess in some ways it helps. You would think that out of pain, whatever kind of pain that is, that something would come out of that could be beautiful, something that could be created.
I know an old man lost somewhere downtown. His old wife, she died. The kids never come around anyway. Says he does not care. He used to write the songs everybody loved. That was years ago. Now there's nothing left to show. But 204, 204, 204, 204. His room is 204. He lives there by himself. His piano and his bed are all he has left anyway. Says he does not care. He's writing his last song. It's a picture he wants to paint. He's got to tell the world he gave a lot of love away. 204, 204, 204, room 204. Neon lights, they flash shadows in the night. Through the darkness in his room, he always saw the light. 204, 204, 204, room 204. I know an old man, got a storm inside his soul. Stares out in the night, a night that's black as coal anyway. Says he does not care, he's writing his last song. Hopes we'll understand what his life was like, with his heart held in his hands. 204, 204, 204, 204.
I know that music was Tommy's one thing, his secret to life, and that he discovered it at the age of 5, which is very young, which also seems like he did that following your footsteps because you were clearly his older brother and everybody looks up to their older sibling. Do you think that discovering such a talent, such a passion like that at the age of 5 is equivalent to like a God-given purpose? Like clearly he devoted his life to music. He could have taken a totally different route and gone to the LA Hollywood style and lived out a music scene over there, but he stayed here. He did things locally. He did whatever felt right to him in his way. Would you say that that was his God-given talent or purpose in life?
Yes, I think he got an opportunity to discover music at 5 years old. And again, just prior to his passing, he expressed in the film that, please help me, Lord. Don't let me go right now. I'm just working on this piece and I'm improving on it. I know I can have it. To hear somebody in this film live their life with that kind of passion that had not to do with the big money that can be made in the music business, but just the love of music in the local community and the people that gravitate to that with back then it was a cup of coffee, now it may be a beer or whatever the story is, to come in, listen to music. It's something that I think you got to revive it here. And I'm here to kind of help that maybe.
And his testimony is beautiful to what true passion looks like. I mean, if he really wanted to make it a more quote-unquote successful option to pursue, that would have made him adopt more of like a businessman mindset instead of a musician mindset who
Good
just
point.
wants to make music because he loves it and he doesn't care what the outcome looks like. He's just going to put it out there and do it. So do you have any idea of what made him transition from the songwriting vocalist era of Tommy Paul and going into more of like a flamenco fusion where he didn't really sing or songwrite anymore? He was just going off of tune after tune?
That's a good question, because in the film there was definitely a slice between, and he says it in the film, and I think what it boiled down to was the challenge that he always kept pushing himself, pushing, as we all do, whatever you do to get better, you know, in anything you want to do, but his happened to be music. And I've never seen anybody that does it better. And I love music. I know people that are very involved in it, but the time that he dedicated to it and things he gave up to live his dream is special. And I still believe that the film is very inspirational to all artists. And even the name of the film denotes not just music, it denotes all artists. And if you get an opportunity, possibly even here at the college, I mean, it'd be a good film to play, show for students that are thinking in terms of the arts. Now, Sherry said a moment ago that she had a crossroad. Her father basically said, you go out and find a job and make some money that way and be able to be a secretary. And she was forced to do that because her parents said, we're not supporting your art type of thing. And that's going to happen to everybody. And Tommy, I'm sure at some point, had that, when he didn't have two nickels to rub together, and it didn't matter. His music meant, but then all of a sudden he became so good that he could play and make money anywhere. Anywhere he got a job, it would go to get a job. He got a job because he was so versatile with how good he became. And that people recognized. When he got a $20 tip, it was like he got a $1,000 tip because it was really a tip saying, I like your music. I like what you're doing. That turned me on to love him because of his love for music.
Right. And you were his manager, right? To my understanding, you were there always supporting his musical career.
During periods of time. There were also periods that we were on the outs because I was more acting like a father. And he, people rebel against that, and I'm his brother. And so he had moments when we wouldn't speak for a month or 6 months or whatever. And somehow we'd come back together for some reason, and then all of a sudden, boom. But then we got it together. And he saw the connections that I had in the lower valley, in the Coachella Valley. And so once I got him connected with the friends of mine, he never wanted for work anymore. Then when he came up here to the High Valley, the High Country here, he played at all the local, very popular places. Give me the name of some of those again.
Happy and Harriet's.
Many times he would always play there, and
Water Canyon.
Yeah, he was out at somewhere out here on the other, and where the Marines are or whatever. He played, but he just, people loved his work. There was a TV individual that had a TV show. I'm trying to think of his name. He would always be there listening to my brother's music.
Huell Hauser.
Huell Hauser came in all the time to listen to my brother play his flamenco work.
Huell loved his music.
Yeah, he loved Tommy's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big compliment. So whose idea was it then to make the documentary, and why
Good question.
did it come out?
Tommy and Rob sat down, and basically because of Tommy's music and Rob's working with him, they sat down together and said, I want to do this to help other people. And one thing led to another. Sorry, I get a little emotional.
It's all right.
And suddenly there was a film that they did to help other people. What better? It wasn't about money. It was about the love of life. Here's a gift. Never give up what your passion is. And that's what Tommy died saying in the film. So,
and Tommy really lived that. And what was wonderful about it was you could instantly see that in him. It was genuine. It was 100%. It wasn't an act. And there was no other way he could be. It almost was like he didn't have a choice as to how he was, how he lived his life, what his priority was. There was a savant kind of facet to his personality where music, I mean, I would go over to his place and he would be so sick, he'd be lying on the couch in pain, and he'd be really upset because he needed to practice.
Yeah.
You know, and at the same time, he'd be making a joke about it because Tommy had an incredible sense of humor, and it was really fun because he was always coming at life's problems and things from a different perspective than most other people would. And then he'd find the humor in it. And he would kind of be accepting at the same time that he wasn't going to accept being sick, you know. He was accepting that that's where I am, but he was not going to stay there. He was going to do his music, by God, and he was going to get on with it. And he was just really, I always found him just inspirational just to be around, and just a absolutely wonderful person. My wife and I both love him. We even loved him when we were his landlords, and he managed to flood our entire cabin. And you know what? It didn't matter because it was Tommy. It might drive you crazy, but you still love the guy. He wanted to share his music a lot with people, and so he wound up saying, you know, we could use some of his music in our television show at the time, Southwest Stories, and it, you know, it really adds a lot. Because my goal with that was to never use any kind of stock music, never use anything other than independent desert musical, you know, pieces, people that have a connection to what we're, you know, talking about on the television show. And so that was really wonderful. And then he even joked with me about doing some pirate music, but we never got around to it, which is a shame because I would love to see what a Tommy Paul pirate song sounds like.
Well, to follow up on that thought, I pulled a quote from Tommy that says, "I need to see the deprivation, the other side of life, and see the pain. Seeing the ugly side of life and finding inspiration from that." And then he goes on to talk about how sadness inspires him to pick up the instrument, following what you were saying a little bit earlier about how he had this really unique perspective to life and how he could just laugh at the ugly moments, the pain. You know, clearly we know that he had a really tragic medical history. He was fighting for his life for a long time. And you just don't see that anymore. You don't see people who want to see the ugly side of the world. People just want to be distracted and look at all the good things, and especially now that we have distractions by the dozen in the time that we're living in now. But he really dedicated himself to being brave and make something from all of his pain.
And he was about as authentic of an artist as you could find, because he refused to live any other way. It was just, you get what you get with
Well,
Tommy.
I think one of the reasons that helps that along is the fact that, again, once you have only the desire to money, you go down a completely different road. And if you had what he had was his desire to create music and to be a part of having people come to him and say, "I love your music." He didn't need money from it. Fortunately, he and his wife had a successful business while they were here in the Beatnik Cafe. And that, you know, that allowed him to live through that life and not have to. They had a lovely home up here in the desert. Ultimately, that they bought, beautiful, a beautiful view down the mountain. that they lived on, and then the Beatnik Cafe. They had life really going here. This is a place here. I truly believe this. I don't live here, but I certainly understand what goes on here. And I think it's really a great spot for people who really are giving people, who want to get involved in the community and care about what goes on with life as far as the arts and music and so on are concerned.
And I would have to agree that Tommy did embody Joshua Tree, and he loved it here. Some people may not know, but he was an artist as well, and in his art, he drew a lot of Joshua Trees. Is there any? Did he ever discuss any reason why to you, or just you just see it in his personality why he loved it here?
That's a good question. I had kind of forgotten about that phase of his life. That to me was not really as evident as when the film was created, and then I saw his artwork, because his artwork was being done because he had so many challenges with his health that when he would wake up, as the film shows, in the middle of the night, he couldn't get back to sleep because he's thinking about this challenge or whatever, that he would pick up the art pad and he'd begin to draw whatever. He doesn't claim he's an artist. In fact, in the film, he doesn't anything. But when you see his work, when you literally see what he's done, you start to say, whoa, this guy was deep into yeah, you've seen it. I know what you're talking about.
He considered his artwork to be therapy more than anything for him.
Yeah.
It was a relaxing diversion. You know, his music, even though he was so passionate about it, I've never known anyone to be more dedicated to writing, making music. That was a job for him. And when he was really concerned about his health also, that was, I think, when the art really kicked in as just a diversion from his health situation.
I think Katrina was also a part. His wife at the time, she was an artist, and he was around that, so he began to pick that up. But I look at it when I see the film, and I go, whoa, wow, that's... And then when you connect it with his songs in the film that are part of that background, you got his music work connected with his artwork, and Jeremy's sitting there shaking his head. So, thank you. You agree?
Well, I do find a lot of his work amazing. I thought that the Joshua Trees was actually there was a story behind that. Like, I wanted to see what was he actually trying to depict. Like, he's depicting a Joshua Tree, but what was his moment? What was his reason for drawing that specific Joshua Tree, or just putting that down? You know, his love for the Mojave was extravagant.
Yes, it was,
and you can tell. You can tell in his music.
He embraced this community and what you have here. It might not be the beautiful Pacific Ocean, but there's beauty in the desert.
How was the instrument, his guitar, so special? Like,
yeah, he had a specific relationship, a really unique relationship with his instrument.
Guitar, that he called the instrument.
Yep. And that gets deep when you think in terms of an artist referring to his guitar as the instrument. I mean, I've never heard that before. And I thought it was interesting because he was so specific about naming certain things. But I think the guitar, even though he could play all kinds of instruments, it's what a very good artist can, they pick up, if you're a flute player, you can play the saxophone because it's the fingering is the same and whatever. So you pick up a lot of instruments. But his guitar work ultimately became part of his ability to be able to sing. In fact, when I first would go home and I'd listen to him play the guitar and sing, I remember he was probably in high school then, and I'd come back from California for a visit to my parents, and he would be practicing or whatever, and I'd go in his room and I'd say, Tommy, the guitar, you really sound good on that guitar. But I said, your voice, I don't see it working. I'll never forget I said that to him. And then his voice came alive. And the combination of his voice and that guitar playing and creating those songs, he has an incredible, incredible voice that you need to hear his voice. I consider him to be similar to a Nat King Cole, that kind of a quality of a voice. And unfortunately, at one point, he just simply said, okay, I want to really become the best guitar player I can play. I remember playing at a concert, him playing a concert where Fitz hired him to play at the Ritz-Carlton. He had a thing up at the Ritz-Carlton down in the valley called Fitz at the Ritz. And Tommy opened up the show for the group that followed. So Tommy was the opening act for the show. And after, I went backstage and I'm talking with all these great musicians, guitar players and whatever, and they're talking about my brother. And they're talking about their guitar. And he says, you don't seem to understand. The way your brother plays the guitar is different. And it requires much more just drumming because he's moving. And so, again, then I started to realize just how great an artist he was and very proud of him.
Tommy elevated what you could do with the instrument. Actually, I think most people really were in awe of what he did with it. Not everybody can.
He was really drawing a lot of his inspiration from the desert, not just the people, but from the actual desert itself. And, when he was at our place, that was on 5 acres out in Landers, he would, go for walks out in the desert and everything. And I think when you've got a mind that's so creative, I think that the stillness of the desert, the natural beauty of it, some of the things that you see going on in nature around you can be drawn on for inspiration, and it can also help center you a little bit. And Tommy seemed to feel really centered and really creative and positive, when I knew him out there. Again, fighting with his health problems all the time still, but he would find those times when he felt good enough to go for walks and everything like that. The one thing, after they split apart, Katrina and Tommy split apart, and the Beatnik was sold, the one theme other than his music that I kept hearing from Tommy all the time was how much he missed his son Julian and how much he couldn't wait to see him again. Because Katrina had moved back to Ohio, I believe it was, right? And somewhere in the Midwest. And so he was always missing Julian. And the last time I saw Tommy, appropriately enough, was in the emergency room at High Desert Medical Center at about 3 a.m. when he was wheeled through and called out my wife's name from the gurney while they were wheeling him through. And it was like, Tommy, you're here. And he was on his way, thanks to his brother, on his way to, I believe, a hospital in San Diego to get specialist treatment that he needed at that point in time. And I never got to see him again. I talked to him a lot, but I never got to see him again.
What were your last moments with Tommy like, if you can talk about it?
Good question. I was actually, my wife and I were at a tennis tournament in Hawaii, and I got a phone call from him, and I did not call him back. And it was a call with his voice. He was sobbing because he had been in the hospital so many times, and he was taken to the hospital in the ambulance again. And he told me that he, this time, had waited too long to go, and he was diagnosed with pneumonia. And I decided not to call him back at that point, but to try to reach him in the morning, because it was an hour time difference from where I was. And I got a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning asking him if I was his brother, and I said yes. And he said, well, the doctor said, well, your brother's in a bad way, and blah, 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 and do you give us the ability to do this, that, and the other? Because I had the power of attorney. And I said, yes, I do. And 1 hour later, they called me back and said he passed away. So it was a sad day. And life, and what he's left me with is to be here today.
Living on his legacy.
Thank you. Thank you. Cher, what do you have to say to close on Tommy? What could you say was positive, honey?
Well, I love Tommy like he was one of our children. More than a brother-in-law, he was like another one of our kids, I guess is how I felt. And I got so much joy when he lived from us that just he was so thankful and grateful for whatever I made. He particularly liked salmon and broccoli and whatnot, whatever. It was just a joy having Tommy in my life.
Would you have said that 204 predicted his ending, his passing? And if so, did he put that in his heart?
Boy, you've done your research. Nice job. 204 was, again, the song that we just basically played, Steve played. And in the film, that has to do with, yes, I've said in the film, because I was part of that I predicted he somewhat predicted his own life. It was a very heavy moment to go into his room after his passing and to see the way he was living, and which was he always had a very organized, very cleanly, nice looking room, and I feel that that song pretty much goes the way that maybe he predicted many years ago that he would be leaving this earth. So that's a very good point that you brought that up from seeing the film. I do believe the film can be helpful to people, just in all areas of art as well as health, because he's saying, keep going, don't give up. Anyway, next question.
You're right, the film brings up really good principles of life to live by, because we see somebody leading by example in this film. And I think just today, having all of us here talking about him, his spirit is still so alive. I mean, the way that you guys talk about him, I feel like I know him. I feel like I missed out on knowing him, even. And I like the fact that you guys can remember him and talk about him in a way that is still so inspirational. I mean, he's still inspiring people beyond the grave. And I think that's one of the most important things that any of us can do in this lifetime. We are granted such short lives, and he's still inspiring people, and people are still talking about him. So I'm sure that he's beyond grateful to both of you guys, and you, Steve, and everybody else who's been in his life, who's helped him out in any way.
And you can see that he actually agreed, because in his music with 204, and I disagree that his music was very therapeutic to him at the same time.
With all of that being said, he is a good reminder of what this desert is and what it still has potential to continue to grow as. And we've learned a lot about the way that he lived his life, and the way that, we can all take a page from him, and just not going down what we think is going to make us successful, but going down what makes us feel good, what makes us feel alive and passionate. And that's more important at the end of the day.
When Steve talked to Sherry and I about the podcast, I really wanted to have his story be lengthened, and this clearly could help. If people want to see the film, we'll make it available.
Tommy's my friend, and he doesn't stop being my friend just because he's gone to another workplace. I think Tommy is still more around than maybe some people might think, and he might be enjoying some of this. I don't know, because this would fit perfectly with Tommy's sense of humor.
I was going to say that you would say that. Sense of humor.
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing. I wish that more people could have heard Tommy's vocals. he had approximately 35 original songs that were so incredible. There's one song that I think so many people would relate to if people want to look at it themselves and play Hard Time. Hard Time is so relatable. And
the not to override you, but good direction that you went in. The song Hard Time is really what started when Fitz heard Tommy's song Hard Time, and I Feel You was another song that backed it up. The phone started ringing off the hook with "Who is this guy?" to Fitz. And Fitz had something going down in the lower valley with a big deal, and he announced it on the radio. This is an unbelievable, I think. You let everybody decide. And he said he was going to be at this event on X. And he's at the event, and a gentleman comes walking up to him.
He's hosting the event.
He's hosting the event. It's a big deal down at one of the casinos. And this gentleman walks up and says, "I'm Dr. So-and-so, and I've come here from Florida. I want to meet this Tommy Paul guy over this song called Hard Time." And the one thing I came up when Fitz called me and told me this, I'm thinking to myself, a guy is a doctor. He must have had somewhere these words, this song, had him want to meet the person who had written these words, because somewhere he was dealing with a hard time. And I'll never forget, I also was dealing with a hard time in life. I had brain surgery, major brain surgery, and I remember being wheelchaired out and playing that song and crying because I was going through a hard time. But the reality is we come through these hard times, and that's what gets us up to get in the race. And that's where Tommy was inspirational with all his problems and challenges he had with his health. His music took away from his sadness and allowed him to go to another place in his mind to play this music and get off of the challenges that he had. And that's for all artists. Get yourself into what you're doing. It'll take your mind to a good place to create and a place that you can now enjoy and sleep nicely at night.
You know, Tommy, I think, is a great beacon for people who are artists who want to be true to themselves, to want to be authentic with their art. And he's also kind of iconic with that renaissance, the cultural renaissance of Joshua Tree back in the early part of this century. There's a lot of wonderful creative people out here still, and there's a lot of great things going on. And, you know, things inevitably change and evolve, but that moment in time will stay with me my entire life because it was just really, truly magical. And it's hard to duplicate those kind of points in time. You can't do it artificially. You can't set out to do it. It just has to happen.
It happens.
And I am really grateful that I was here for that time.
Well, again, I continue to say this place, Joshua Tree, to all of you people listening that are here. This is special. Wrap your arms around it and find a way to find your joy, because it's here.
Yeah, the stillness in the desert, there's nothing like it. Nothing. Even if you travel across the world, it's special here.
And Tommy Paul lives on. He mentioned in the video the medically challenged. Can you give us more insight about that? How he was outspoken for those who were going through suffering, and that's one thing in his music I tend to draw to.
I truly think that when the idea came up to do a film, it had to be connected with certainly his health at the time, because he had come back from this very, very negative time. And Rob, who helped him create the film, Rob and he got together and said, let's do something good for people in all areas. all artists and all people that are challenged with a health problem. And let's do something to show what you've done to get through this period in order to help them get through their challenge. And that's why they did it. I mean, and I think I'm happy to be a part of still helping to have that go out to help, which is why I'm up here today, to do this for people that live in this beautiful city of Joshua Tree.
It has been such an immense pleasure and privilege to be here with you guys today. Thank you guys for sharing your stories, sharing Tommy Paul's story, and we urge you listening to watch the film and know him for yourself. Listen to his music. Let his music speak to you in any way that you need it to, and to remember his message. Never give up. Thank you so much, Jay, for your time. Thank you, Sherry, for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for everyone that's listening. This was Area 62. We'll see you next time.
As far as success goes, I believe that happiness should be the ultimate marker for anybody, as opposed to, because obviously wealth doesn't always bring happiness. It can bring an enormous amount of problems and stress trying to stay wealthy, or that sort of a thing. I'm not in that rat race. I'm just in a rat race with myself, and I feel extremely happy about where I'm at right now, because I was able to live on to realize my dream even further as far as my music goes. You asked me earlier about religion and how that, whether or not I was religious. There have been, when I was in the hospital, during that period of time where I had the infection in my blood, I would lay in the bed sometimes looking up at the ceiling in the room, and I would clench my fists together as tightly as I could, and I was talking to somebody that was, as you talk to God, I guess you always assume he's above you, but he could be below you too. Anyway, so I'm talking to God, and I'm saying to him with all my might, every bit, every fiber of my might, that I just want to, just give me some more time. This can't be it. I was just making some major breakthroughs on the guitar, and I can't go now, and whatever. It's making me a little emotional. So I guess he must have granted the wish, because I got out of there, and I was able to recuperate, which took a long time, and come back to a happier life with a few obstacles, but nothing I can't handle right now. I'm good.
Good.
Tears are probably always good. I didn't. Blubbering's probably not good.
It was perfect. You really faked that well.
Yeah, the water aroma. Yeah.
My Sally, why does this keep happening to me? What gives you the right to be doing this thing to me? Sally, what's that in your eyes I see? Was this really meant to be? It's all over now. It's all over now. It's all over now. it's all over now. Ooh.
Henry had to walk the streets. There was nowhere to go when the winter came. Henry's hungry deep inside, waiting for his social security. Henry doesn't talk too much, and he cannot read. Does not even know Henry is alone. Henry made the local news. 6 o'clock, they thought that they could help him out. Film where he's living now and comes from the walls. It's awfully cold, and Henry getting right to the point. He can't go on. Bono's crew is goodbye, and Henry's alone. Henry is a lonely man, cannot feel his heart beating anymore. Something killed him deep inside, waiting for his walls to tumble down. Voices ringing in his head say it's the end. Finally he knows Henry's alone. Henry had to walk the streets, was nowhere to go when the winter came. Henry's hungry deep inside, waiting for his social security. Henry doesn't talk too much, and he cannot read. Does not even know Henry's alone. Henry's alone.
Thank you for joining us in Area 62.